Spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Saint Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord, glory to you.
Let us be attentive. At that time the disciples put this question to Jesus: Why do the scribes claim that Elijah must come first? In reply he said, Elijah is indeed coming, and he will restore everything. I assure you, though, that Elijah has already come, but they did not recognize him, and they did as they pleased with him. The Son of Man will suffer at their hands. In the same way, the disciples then realized that he had been speaking to them about John the Baptizer. As they approached the crowd, a man came up to Jesus and knelt before him. Lord, he said, take pity on my son who is demented and in a serious condition. For example, he often falls into the fire and frequently into the water. I have brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. In reply, Jesus said, what an unbelieving and perverse lot are you! How long must I remain with you? How long can I endure you? Bring him here to me. Then Jesus reprimanded the demon, and it came out of the body. That very moment the boy was cured.
Glory to you, O Lord, glory to you.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to him forever.
Well, when reading this gospel today, something comes to my mind, and a question comes to my mind. Well, what about us? Whom do we wait for? Do we expect Elijah to come, or the Son of Man? Can we do what those apostles were not able to do? This man who was bringing his son, and he brought them in front of the apostles, and he says, I have brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. And Christ expresses quite some anger in that moment. He says, what an unbelieving and perverse lot are you. Does that apply to us as well? When the apostles came to Jesus asking him, why do the scribes claim that Elijah must come first? Elijah was a prophet. And this is why Christ says, well, he will come first. Or actually, he came first. But still, as with original Elijah, the same with the second Elijah, which means St. John the Baptizer, humans, were not able to recognize him. This is the limitation that actually makes Christ so much more angrier in that second part of the gospel, when he really screams on his seminarians there, what an unbelieving and perverse lot are you! How long must I remain with you? We wouldn't probably like to hear something like that from God, wouldn't we? Well, we are so much ahead of the apostles in that state when this actually happened, because I hope that every Christian knows that God has come and he is among us. This is why when the priest carries the gospel out to the people, the only thing that he says is, Christ is among us. And then, because this is an explanation, an expression of our realizing of that, we bow down and we kiss the Holy Gospel. It is the result of us realizing that really Christ is among us. God is among us. There is no more need for any Elijah. There is no more need for any other prophet. There is no more need for anything else, because Christ himself is among us. Because of that, everything is possible. to cure everything, all the way down to the original sin. This is possible. To be saved, to enjoy eternity in the glory of God, it became possible, thanks to His continuous and following presence among us. We have been talking about the commandments these last couple of weeks, and to conclude the first commandment, which we already have done practically, but I picked up just a simple book, An Examination of Conscience. It is printed by the Diocese of Minnesota, I think, but I'm pretty sure that pretty much every diocese will have a little tiny booklet like this explaining how to do an examination of the conscience. And I would like to read, to conclude the first commandment, read the sins that authors of this book bring out for any person when trying to examine our conscience and consider the first commandment, in consideration of the first commandment. Well, the first commandment goes like this: I am Lord your God, you shall not have strange gods before me. Well, what are the sins that the authors of this book quote? Involvement in occult practices, witchcraft, a word that I don't even know, Ouija. Ouija board. I would never guess that pronunciation. Ouija boards, seances, S-E-A-N-C-E-S. Seances. See, I could not have sent this because I don't even know what it is. Palm reading, tarot cards, hypnotism, divination, astrology, black magic, sorcery. Involvement in or adherence to New Age or Eastern philosophies, atheism or agnosticism. By Eastern philosophies, it is indicated here some of the big but the big Eastern religions. For example, Buddhism is not practically a religion, but it is a philosophy, because there is no God in Buddhism. Everybody is a God once you reach a certain level of perfection. So it's not a religion as itself, it's a philosophy, it's a way of life. So adherence to Eastern philosophy, not using some of the practices from there, but really adhering, believing, that makes it a sin. Apostasy, which means which indicates leaving the church. Adherence to schismatic group, putting faith in superstition, horoscopes, good luck charms, etc. Joining the Masons or other secret society. I would like to underline here that it's by joining them. We can read about them. We can actually be tempted by some theories or some things from their beliefs, but it is by joining a society that we, and also because the ritual of the joining of the society puts you in a position where you are united with the common belief of the society itself, even if your personal belief is different. It could be different, but by joining a secret organization, and one of them is Masons, we are put ourselves outside of God's law and we sin against the first commandment. Receiving Holy Communion in the state of mortal sin. Receiving the sacraments of confirmation or matrimony while in the state of mortal sin. The question of the mortal sin is very, I would say, westernized. Every sin is mortal. It is not possible to make a list of mortal sins and then on the other end list of not mortal sins or venial sins. It is not well, we can do this because there are some sins that are graver than others. But really, to understand what does it mean, a mortal sin. A mortal sin can be even the smallest of the venial sins. If it is the last thing we do and we die right afterwards, it becomes a mortal sin. So, when we say that receiving Holy Communion or any other sacrament, well, sacrament, confirmation, matrimony, specifically in the state of mortal sin, we have to understand that there is no list that we can compare and say, okay, I have not committed a mortal sin. Any sin is mortal. If you feel that you want to go to confession before receiving Holy Communion, do it. Even if there is none of the sins on that part of the list, mortal sins. Even if it's just venial sins. But we have to confess them. If you have time for the confession, if you want to come for Holy Communion, and you feel even just the venial sins, go and confess them. Because any sin can be moral. Willful participation in illicit, non-emergency, general absolution services. Well, this is a more technical something that, well, I have never performed myself, and it's something pretty rare, I guess, or might be not. Maybe I just don't know. But anyway, general absolution is in some circumstances, it is permitted for a priest and for the congregation to receive a general absolution from the sins. It is like a group confession. When there is a group of people just about to die, and they all pretty much are Catholics, or they would want to go to confession, and there is a priest, but there is no way to hear personal confessions. The priest can give a general absolution, relying on God's will for forgiveness and His will to forgive every sin. And thus he is thinking that if a lot of people could be there, and if the person is sincerely sorry for his sins and he wants to repent, God will forgive him. Then if the person does not, he will be excluded from this group by his own state of soul, not by the action of the priest. So there are these things, or general absolution, and in Orthodox churches they are used quite often, and there are general confessions heard, where the people come and the confession is heard of a group and not for a single person. So a willful participation in illicit, not emergency, which means if you can go to a regular confession, but you still participate in a general absolution, but you had the opportunity to go to personal, so the reason why you went to general absolution service would be because you were too cowardly to go and to talk to the priest personally and to confess to God personally. That is a sin against the first commandment. Being married by a justice of the peace or by a minister of another denomination without proper dispensation from the church. Involvement in false or pagan worship, willfully denying the faith of the Catholic Church and Christ, despair of God's grace and mercy, presumption, committing a mortal sin with the idea that you can just go to confession, hatred of God, simony, buying or selling spiritual things, failure to receive Holy Communion at least once per year, if possible during the Easter season, desecration of the Holy Eucharist. If we recognize ourselves in these things, but also in the other things that we mentioned, that we spoke about before, and some of them were repeated in this little explanation, then it means that we have sinned against the first commandment. From next week on, we will continue with the second commandment, which is the commandment that is talking about the name. It is very well connected to the first commandment. In the first commandment, we are asked by God not to have any other God. The second commandment tells us what does that mean more precisely. It is explanatory commandment coming out of the first one. You should not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. What does it mean? What does it mean, the meaning of vain in the first thing? And also we will try to think and discuss what does it mean, what are the right ways of using and taking God's name properly, truthfully. What does that mean? Because this commandment involves both. And that we will do from next Monday. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to Him forever.
Let us all say with our whole soul, with our whole mind,